Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bound. We are rounding out our summer series this week with a show dedicated to books. And what better time than holiday time to get stuck in to a great read. And we have an armful to recommend this week. Firstly, I'll be speaking with the wonderful novelist Christopher Bollen about his twisty thriller Havoc. Then we'll hear the beloved author Fredrik Backman talk about his latest, My Friends. Then finally, Monocle's Georgina Godwin will be giving us a whirlwind tour of the book festivals she's been visiting around the world and which great reads we should be packing into our suitcases for those trips of our own. So do stay tuned. That's all coming up right here on Monocle on Culture. First, we're speaking to the New York-based novelist and writer Christopher Bollen. Chris has published 6 novels, numerous short stories, and has written for all the great magazines you'd expect, especially on travel. Departures, Town and Country, Tea. He's got a super wide range as a writer, but for his latest novel, Havoc, he's gone genre with a slippery crime caper with some delicious twists. Havoc pits an 80-year-old divorcee, Maggie Burkhart, against an 8-year-old boy named Otto, soon to become her nemesis. As the pair plot and preen around the faded grandeur of a former imperial hotel in Luxor, it's all good, nasty fun. I caught up with Chris on his summer travels on the Greek island of Anafi, and I began by asking him whether he felt like the book itself is a particular summer read.
Yes, I mean, I tend to write always like a sort of exotic destination. It's where I get my inspiration as while I'm traveling, often in summer. So it makes total sense to me that most of my books, and especially this one, has that feel of being somewhere away, somewhere far from home. And, you know, you can't get a hotter place in the world, actually, than the Sahara Desert and where it's set. So, yeah, hopefully it has that feeling of escape.
We often exist in fiction in a world these days of kind of what you might call boringly relatable characters, right? Now you've concocted 2 at either end of the age spectrum. We've got the main character, the 81-year-old Maggie Burkhart, and then we've got 8-year-old Otto, who becomes her nemesis through the novel. Presumably, first of all, that was done on purpose to really show that there's similarities at either end of the age spectrum when it comes to evil.
Absolutely. I mean, that was what so interested me so much about inhabiting this 81-year-old woman's brain, which was weirdly easy to inhabit. I was shocked by how well I took on the characters of an 81-year-old widow from Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, the interest of doing it was that I wanted to sort of these bookends of life, like the very old and the very young, the 2 people who, when that most of the world ignores or doesn't listen to, both of them sort of infantilized, these 2 sort of ignored entities sort of battling it out in a way, like almost like a Greek myth of battling it out. But actually I was inspired by the pandemic because it was sort of this moment of asking, like, do you sacrifice the old for the young or the young for the old? And so I was kind of fascinated by this idea of these two marginal groups that will all become, hopefully, and when we kind of think of as loving and caring and taking care of them, sort of like filled with venom and hatred for each other. It was the first time, I think, that I wrote a character that wasn't around my own age. And it's the first person. It's all from Maggie's side of the story, the 81-year-old. And so it really felt like a freedom. The people always say, write what you know. I think taking yourself into a character in a brain that is so unlike you gives you this amazing freedom that you don't kind of have when you are trying to describe yourself in some other form, that's like you. So I don't know. I was really, it felt so fun to write Maggie's character for that very reason, because she was so nothing I had ever approached before.
Yeah, and it strikes me that the sort of fun in the character that you had with the character and the characters, in fact, it really comes off the page. I mean, Maggie has a pretty waspish eye, and it's her sort of self-imposed job to meddle in the affairs, literally or otherwise, of her fellow guests and her fellow travellers through life. How much of an invention was it to find the foibles of the people we're travelling with? I'm presuming that your notebook is full on your travels, even this summer, Chris.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm an obsessive observer. I'm like sort of I'm a horrible starer. I pay so much attention. I'm at a hotel right now, and I'm, of course, like leaning over the balcony trying to understand what this couple next to me is up to. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's what's so fun and exciting about a hotel is that you are, and this is true, and this, I'm not the one to discover this. I mean, this is all through Agatha Christie. This is through Wilkie Collins. This goes way back, but just that like you are dropped in as this total stranger, but it's in this familial setting with other strangers, and you can have any backstory you want. And of course, Maggie is like she's like a wolf in sheep's clothing because everyone treats her as a sweet old lady instead of this sort of vicious meddler who sort of destroys lives. And that's what's like, so, that's what's so exciting about hotels is like, you sort of can make up your own life. You can make up the lives of these other people. If you observe correctly, though, you see all the tensions running underneath the surface of relationships, couples and families. I mean, we've also like seen like people often break up on vacations. People often, have like terrible fights. People look so miserable with their families if they have children. So I mean, it's just such an amazing crucible.
Yeah, you've got such a sort of ready-made canvas, haven't you? I mean, this is very much the Death in the Nile territory or Murder on the Orient Express territory, where everyone brings something different to the table. Everyone's got something to hide, and you just need someone in the middle of it to stir well, let's call it soup. But that's what you've got, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, there's a story of Patricia Highsmith sort of having this revelatory moment in Positano where she was looking out on a beach in the morning and a young man walked by and she suddenly, this is, the folklore, she suddenly thought of Ripley and the whole story came to her. And I always thought that was like such a lie, a mythological, she's myth building. But this happened to me when I was at this hotel, this poor hotel, which is such an amazing hotel in Luxor. And it's actually where Agatha Christie wrote some of Death on the Nile. It's called the Winter Palace. I was sitting in the back garden right after the pandemic, and there was an old American woman berating a waiter about her lunch order. And in a way that like she obviously was staying at this hotel way too long, and all of a sudden I had this just complete understanding of the character I wanted to write and the story. I mean, it really is like a testament to this total stranger I saw at a hotel who was, just being a terrible guest.
Yeah, beware the guest that becomes a resident, right? For all waiters and hotel managers the world over.
Totally, except that I always like secretly fantasize about being like, living in Claridge's or something like that. Like, oh, amazing.
We've talked about the wonderful characters, Chris. Just a quick note on the plot, which is wound like a tight spring. It's a super entertaining book that really whisks you through all sorts of different situations during to and it's wonderful, exciting stuff and head scratching stuff at times. What about the plotting for you? I mean, you talked about the inspiration for the characters and the joy of bringing them to life, but plotting is a little bit different. I mean, are you a kind of post-it notes on the wall guy? Are you a kind of murder wall guy? How does it work, or do you just let the pen flow?
I do not do any advanced outline or anything, because I think the fun of writing the book comes in the total surprise of watching the plot unfold. And you know what? I've been really lucky because you're always painting yourself into a corner, when you're writing these kinds of books too, because, you have to deliver an ending that's exciting and everything has to sort of at least somewhat make sense. And so you're sort of just gambling. Like, is this gonna, am I just going to end up with all these strings that can't be tied? But I feel like if you know everything from the beginning, it's just like, it's like building an IKEA shelf. Like you're just like putting you're putting the screw where it's supposed to be. So I don't know. It's like kind of an exciting risk. I mean, all novels, writing any novel is a total gamble, but it does sort of ups the ante when you actually don't have any map whatsoever.
So you chuck the jigsaw pieces up in the air and see where they land in a way before you start concocting a picture.
Well, absolutely. And see, and there is like a sort of a method to the madness of this book, because I knew that Maggie, the 81-year-old, and Otto, the 8-year-old, were going to, they needed to continually back and forth sabotage each other, and like each time raising the stakes. So, it starts small and petty and ends up like very bloody, So I knew that like each time I did a tit, there had to be a tat that was worse. And so that was sort of how I sort of concocted the back and forth of it. And so that was the sort of guide I had, and it's sort of, if you when you read the book, you see that it sort of works its way up the animal kingdom, like from small animals all the way to humans. They are all sacrificed.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have the backdrop of those Egyptian pharaohs and gods and things to play with as well, right? And just finally, I mean, we've talked about the sort of waspishness and these sort of dual nemeses from either end of the sort of age spectrum of human life, Chris. But also there is humanity does creep into this novel. It is no spoilers here, obviously, but Maggie is obviously at advanced age. She's obsessed with catching the sunset in this hotel. These are not cartoon characters that you've drawn. They are real, breathing people that jump off the page. I guess it was important for you to imbue both of them, but especially your main protagonist, perhaps with real breath, as if somehow, sometime soon, they might be their last.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of Maggie. She's sort of a villain, but also she's incredibly lonely. I mean, it's actually the saddest position you can be in at the end of your life. Like, you've lost your family, you don't have a community. She's sort of this wandering nomad who is looking for a new family, And so in a way, like it's a story of someone who is just trying desperately to find a replacement family or something to do with herself or a way to keep herself occupied, So I'm glad to hear you say that, because I really feel like underneath all the, evil that is comes about, there is a sort of heart that's kind of broken and still ticking.
That was Chris Bollen, and his novel Havoc is out now and published by Harper, or Borough if you're in Britain. Now, Fredrik Backman is the best-selling author of novels including A Man Called Ove and Anxious People. The Swedish writer's latest is My Friends, which follows 4 teenagers over a fateful summer that culminates in tragedy and the creation of a painting that will change a young orphan's life 25 years later. As funny as it is tender, My Friends is a testament to how art and friendship can help people to overcome even the most brutal of beginnings. Fredrik joined Blake Matic in Midori House, and Blake began by asking Fredrik about the concept that the traditional family is not the only depiction that people might make.
It's not intentionally. I don't think I set out to do it. I don't set out to do anything, really, because that would imply me knowing what the heck I'm doing. But I don't. I look for a story. I look for characters. Stories are the only thing that I enjoy. It's the only thing I've ever enjoyed. I just look for stories wherever I go, and I think in this case that the idea of found family worked very well for all characters, because I think that's what art is. The book is a lot about art, and it's a lot about culture, and it's a lot about that feeling of you don't belong, you don't have a sense of home, you don't have a sense of identity, and you find something, you find art, or you find culture, or you find music, and then through that you find your people. You experience this found family thing of finding someone who loves the same things as you love, and that's how you find connection and community.
And I'm kind of interested to hear that you think, or at least that you come into a project like this, not so much by the seat of your pants, but maybe just as a pantser writer. You don't, plot out everything. But I heard recently in an interview you mentioned that you had your first crisis of confidence as a writer in this book, which comes as a surprise because it seems to me quite assured. There's quite a sense in the novel in terms of things such as the fact that you don't go out of your way to over-explain any place settings, or there's kind of an ambiguous settings of big cities, train stations, coastal towns that are maybe a bit past their prime, but it never feels diffident or lost. Is that something you maybe overcame in the process of the writing?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, I wish I could say it was my first crisis of confidence. It really wasn't. It was one of many, many, but I think this was by far the biggest one. I think at several points in this project, I felt that whatever I had at some point, if I had a skill, if I had a talent at some point, then that's gone now. That I can't tap into it anymore. I can't find my way back to it. I don't know how to do this. And it was a deep crisis, and where I felt like I should retire from this and not be a writer anymore, because I don't know. It's taking too much out of me, and it's eating me too much. So that was a pretty dark, deep hole. And I talk about it because I know that there's a lot of younger writers who they need to be told that this will keep on happening for you. I've been a published writer for 15 years. Like, I should know what I'm doing at this point. I should be fine at this point. I shouldn't struggle so much with my anxiety issues at this point. But it doesn't work like that. Like, success has nothing to do with the anxiety levels. And people ask me, like, how do I know if the first draft is any good? I say, you don't worry about it. It's going to suck. The first draft it's got to be terrible. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the first draft. It's got to be terrible.
You mentioned the darkness and that is in this novel. And the darkness, I mean, anyone who wants to be a writer and thinks it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows has got the wrong career in mind. And I shouldn't judge a book by its cover. And I don't. We see 3 young boys, teenagers, swimming. And it's kind of perfectly innocent. And maybe it's just because I'm Australian, so every body of water is inherently threatening with some sort of imminent death. But this novel is under the surface. I'm interested to hear that you said the first draft was perhaps more shadow than light, and that you had to kind of maybe find a bit of a balance there.
Yeah, it's that sense of hope that I had to go look for. Because usually I mean, the easiest explanation is that usually I start with the humor, I add the darkness. And this time around, I started with the darkness and I added the humor. Okay. And then I sprinkled fart jokes on top, because there's a lot of fart jokes in the book.
Lots of great fart jokes.
There's a lot of fart jokes in the books, but that was the system this time around. But I think in the first draft, the darkness was overwhelming to the people who read it, because there was no now story. And the book as it is today, it's a then story and it's a now story with these 2 people who come across this painting together and they go on this road trip. And that story had a lot more light to it. It was easier to access humor in it. And so I added that story on top of it, because in the original first draft, there was only a then story. It was only these kids on the pier. And the violence was more graphic, was more visual. We were in the room as the violence was occurring. And when I rewrote it, a lot of the violence, we learn about the violence afterwards, after it happened. Mm-hmm. We're not in the room as it's actually happening. So it's in many ways the same story. You just choose the perspective of it. So that's how I and then you try to find hope and redemption. And the promise to the reader that it's going to work out okay. But it's also a lot of it was just, I mean, I laugh when I say that I sprinkled fart jokes on top, but it was a way for me to get into, like, how are these kids surviving? Well, they're surviving the way that the kids, like, I knew kids like this. They're not based on actual people, but they're based on a lot of different people that I grew up with who had horrible, horrible circumstances in their lives one way or another. And they're almost exclusively were the funniest human beings I've ever been around. Like, they would crack you up and they would make jokes. And so that's kind of how I found my way into the light of the story. It's that, all right, but these are the kind of jokes that they would make. These are the kind of things that they would laugh about, fart jokes, because fart jokes are just so stupid and so funny. And it's so inherently funny that these are the things that they would laugh their heads off about. And then, that's how I found my way into the light of it.
And connection, I think, is key, because that experience of art is connection in a way that knowing whatever date Caravaggio painted, whatever painting doesn't really matter, although it gets you good marks. But of course, connection is in the center of this book amongst a group of friends, and in the contemporary tie line of the novel as well, amongst some budding friends. And yet there's something which in some books kind of irks me about friends, where they're it's inexplicably wonderful. They've all got these great friends, and they've all got great jobs, and they all live in Lower Manhattan, and it's all sunshine and rainbows living in the inner city. And yet you seem very aware throughout the novel. I think there's a point at which one of the characters, Ted's older brother, says, "Not everyone can be as lucky with their friends as you." And later, I think you write, "No one could paint friendship like this," but paint literally, "without first having been a completely lonely child." So in the same way we talk about the contrast between the darkness and the laughter, rather, there is a wonderful sense that not only is that friendship miraculous that these kids have, but it doesn't feel detached. I also like the way that it happens in a summer. Sometimes friendships don't last forever. They aren't these, two peas in a pod. Sometimes it really is concentrated, and you have to kind of feed off that forevermore if someone dies or leaves or whatever it is. It's wonderfully textured, I think, the friendship in the book.
Well, thank you. And I was looking for that thing where, the kind of friends that you have when you're 14, 15, you never have that friendship again. Even if you stay friends for your entire lives, it's never going to be what it was at that age. I think there's a line in the book where it says, these are the last years where every friend is a childhood friend. And it's that breaking point between that last summer as children, and they kind of know that it's the last summer as children, and they kind of cling on to it. They understand that reality is coming fast now, and we're going to have to deal with life as adults. But they're kind of clinging on to that last summer as children, where they know that these are the last weeks that we have, where we can do whatever we want, where we're free, where we can be stupid and childish, and laugh at stupid fart jokes and do stupid things, and go in a shopping cart down a steep hill and just go on these stupid adventures and have these stupid ideas and put fireworks in mailboxes and all of these things that they do as children, and they're kind of clinging on to it. And that was important to me, that it was their knowledge of this is our last summers as children, but also maybe our last summer together. But it's also the fact that I wanted to portray this friendship where it wasn't perfect, but it was miraculous. It was miraculous because all these kids knew loneliness, and that's the basis of their friendship, that they all were exceptionally lonely children, and when they found each other, it was life-saving.
That was Fredrik Backman speaking to Blake Mattich, and My Friends is published by Simon & Schuster, and it's out now. To round out this week's show, let's hear from Georgina Godwin, the voice of Monocle's own excellent Meet the Writers. Georgina has been racking up the air miles in recent months on a tour of literary events near and far. And so I was delighted to be joined by her in the studio to hear her rattle off where she's been and what we should be reading.
Basically, my pursuit this year has been of summer, year-round. So I went off to Calcutta Literary Meet in January. One of the people I spoke to there was Lee Durrell, widow of the late Jerry Durrell. Then on to the Jaipur Literary Festival, which is billed as the greatest literary event.
Is this Will Dalrymple's one?
It is, and it's just so fabulous. So many wonderful people there. Benjamin Moser, who won a Pulitzer Prize for his book on Susan Sontag. People like Gideon Levy, the Israeli journalist, Yaroslav Tromifom, all sorts of people there. Then on to the Gaul Literary Festival in Sri Lanka. Gaul is beautiful walled town. One of the people there, Satnam Sanghera, who of course is a British journalist but great Asian writer. On to Adelaide writers, where I spoke to Howard Jacobson, Michelle de Kretzer, who's just won the Miles Franklin Prize, which is the sort of Australian equivalent of the Booker, Bethany Hughes. I was also speaking to my brother, Peter Godwin, who's got a new memoir out called Exit Wounds. And that was really why I expanded this tour. I do this tour kind of every year in slightly different locations, but this year I could offer them a 2-for-1 one with my brother as well. Back to London to talk to Paul Lynch, who, of course, won the Booker Prize. Reza Aslan at a new festival called Voices of Faith, which was so interesting, just people from all different faiths. And Reza Aslan has this book called The Messiah, and it basically takes apart the myth of Jesus. Fascinating book. Elif Shafak, again, absolutely wonderful author to speak to. Her new book is great. Then over to Auckland, to the Writers' Festival there. One of the great sessions I did there was with Edward Wong, the New York Times writer, Anna Fifield, Washington Post, and Philippe Sands, the human rights lawyer. On to Sydney Writers' Week, and Alan Hollinghurst, I guess, was my key guest at that. And then Hay Festival Wales, which is always a joy, with Jeff Dyer, Sigrid Rousing, the Mexican writer Guadalupe Nettel, and Saba Sams. I'm recommending her book, Gunk, as one of my summer reads.
Excellent
really
title.
Fascinating.
We all need some gunk in the summer, come on.
Then JLF at the British Library, which is Jaipur Comes to London, and one of the people there was Saad Mohseni. Now, he is the head and set up Radio Free Afghanistan and has written a book about it too. And he has this huge media organisation now across that part of the world. Fascinating man, now living in London. Then just a couple of weeks ago, I did Sir Michael Palin, who was an absolute joy, and he will be on Meet the Writers very, very soon.
Oh, wonderful.
Coming up, Edinburgh Book Festival, not allowed to say who I'm interviewing, but very exciting people. Then on to Hay Festival in Mexico, again, can't say the guests, and then Cheltenham. Coming up, also the Ubud Festival in Bali, and we'll be at Charleston in South Carolina in November. And finally, Rob, this is a weird one. I'm doing a literary festival at sea aboard the Queen Mary 2, sailing.
Oh, wonderful. This is brilliant.
Sailing from New York to Southampton, and there'll be all these authors on board, and it's just going to be so much fun. But of course, all of this sounds like I was just dossing off on this holiday. But honestly, so many authors, so many books to read. And it wasn't like I was lying on a beach. I was in my hotel room, or sometimes on the beach. But frankly, I'm not a great beach person. But I did want to tell you who, out of all of that, I think you should be reading. May I?
Please do.
So Namita Gokal is this woman in her 70s. She's from India. And 40 years ago, she wrote a book called Paro, Dreams of Passion. And you've got to realise how shocking that was at the time. 40 years ago, this Indian woman writing about sex, infidelity and all of that. It's just been re-released as a Penguin classic. And it's just a lovely escapist romp. Then
so that sounds like perfect for summer, because in terms of genres, that's the kind of thing we want. We want to lean into the sensual. Do we?
Exactly. We do want to lean into the sensual, but I also think it's important to future-proof ourselves and to think about what's happening in the world. And for that, I choose Ewan Morrison, who's a Scottish writer, who's written this book called For Emma, and it's about AI. It's absolutely terrifying, but I think it's a really necessary read and so beautifully written. Gunk, as I said, by Saba Sams. It's kind of about motherhood, I guess, but it's set in this club, which is called Gunk, because that's what the floor is, basically.
Okay.
And it's really funny. It's a great book. Esther Freud has just published her book, My Sister and Other Lovers. And of course, she is of the Freud family, Lucy and Sigmund. Her sister is, in fact, Bella Freud, the designer. And again, just a lovely, lovely book. But literary fiction, this one. It's not your kind of chick lit. Bird Milk and Mosquito Bones is a book by Priyanka Mattu. She's from Kashmir originally. And it's fascinating about how she goes from this Kashmiri childhood to being this really successful Hollywood agent in LA. And then writes this beautiful, beautiful book. And of course, finally, I have to say, Exit Wounds by Peter Godwin. It is his latest memoir, and it's about the period where our mother was dying. And it's beautifully written. And of course, I would say that because he is my brother. And it's about both of our lives, the intertwining of our lives. Monocle is even mentioned in there, actually. So Monocle fans might want to pick up a copy of that.
That was Monocle's Georgina Godwin. My thanks to Georgina and to Chris, Blake and Fredrik. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie Monaghan-Coombs and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. And some news. Monocle on Culture will be going on hiatus at the end of this month, so you might not hear from us for a wee while. But we do have one more show before then, and it's one we're really excited to bring you. So we will be back at the same time next week. But until then, from me, Robert Bound, thanks for tuning in.
What What does culture say about the way we live and how we could live better? Join Monocle in Barcelona this September for our annual Quality of Life conference. From bold new voices in media, design and the arts to lively debates on diplomacy, design and urbanism, it's 3 days of fresh thinking and creative exchange. Find out more and book your seat at monocle.com/conference.